sign language
explanation,
interpreter,
and then they
and all
care
our viewers
or
and
help
listeners. you can do, help a business to a point. Because if you have a business, you can say, I'm just starting out, so I might need some support. Can the government help me? But you have to be working towards getting on your feet so that the government help you to get on your feet, and then you can continue, and then the government can go and help other new businesses coming on who might need some support. And so you help businesses, they graduate out the program, you bring on others who can benefit. So in a sense, you're training your workers, and that training is significant. And you're helping businesses to get to a point, and you're coming back and helping other businesses. So it becomes a stream of helping small businesses to get on their feet. But at some point, one would expect it just can't be that the government pay your worker forever. And I don't think that is an expectation of a reasonable business person as well. So I think this is done with a lot of compassion, but a lot of understanding. And what we're saying is, can we have a shared approach to STEP? You bear some of the cost, the government bears some of the cost, and so that business can continue to grow, and that business can continue to flourish. So that's one question. The other one you asked, let me answer both. The other one you asked was the question about Guyana. I want to just draw your memory a little bit. When the issue of Venezuela and Guyana came up, I want to drag your memory that there was a summit. The summit was held in St. Vincent at the airport, where we brought the then president, President Maduro, CARICOM did this, and we brought President Ali of Guyana. Both of them sitting across at a table, maybe 12 days together, and talking face to face, man to man. And coming out of that was what you call the Argyle Agreement. And that Argyle Agreement said that between Venezuela and Guyana, there will be no military action. CARICOM did that. And so CARICOM has done significantly, CARICOM did a significant amount of work to ensure that there was no conflict between Guyana and St. Vincent. So I understand how you're phrasing your question, but even before the present Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago came in, CARICOM had already met with both presidents, and in an agreement called the Argyle Agreement, I'm sure it's online, you can find it somewhere, CARICOM fostered an agreement between Venezuela, Maduro at the time, President Maduro at that point, and President Ali from Guyana, and came up with the Argyle Agreement. I felt proud. Let me tell you why I felt proud. Because here we were going to face a serious conflict, possibility of a serious conflict with Venezuela and Guyana. And CARICOM stepped in, brought both of them together. Not words, but brought them together in action and had an agreement. And as a result of that, there was no military conflict between Guyana and Venezuela. And as a result of that, I think CARICOM should be given a significant amount of credit for that significant agreement that was reached in what we call now, or term now, the Argyle Agreement of no conflict between Guyana and Venezuela.
Just want to quick, there was a little bit of conflict during the election time for Guyana recently. There were the Venezuela military on the border of Essequibo, where they actually fired shots across to the Guyana soldiers. Some of them got injured. So I don't know if you're aware of that. You can look into that.
Right. So there were some skirmishes.
Right.
But there was no outright war. And what we did when those skirmishes happened, so we stepped in a lot behind the scenes, and we were able to quell those things.
Okay,
right?
Good.
So we used that type of diplomacy. And I don't want to continue, but I really want to give somebody else a chance, because you asked 2 questions and I answered them extensively. You were able to follow up. Maybe you can come around again, right? Just give somebody else a chance so that we can go forward. And then, we go around. Oh, I didn't realize that. Sorry, I did not realize. Uh-huh.
Good afternoon, this is Hendrickson. Earlier today, you said young citizens have access to land ownership. So my question is to you, is what new initiatives are being considered to reduce youth unemployment and skill mismatches? And my second question relates to climate and the Sustainable Island State Agenda. That question is, what tangible progress has been made towards the Sustainable Island State Agenda?
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much for those questions, especially on the matter of youth unemployment. We were able to bring down youth unemployment significantly. Presently, we have over 30,000 people registered with Social Security, actually paying now, actual paying, not receiving benefits. And the population of St. Kitts and Nevis is just about 52,000. So when you take out children and elderly, it means most people in St. Kitts and Nevis, most people are working. However, you made a very good point with respect to the youth. And so what we have done a significant amount of work with the youth. For example, skill training, for example. We have entered into the area of training our youth in multiple things. Cybersecurity, technician in the solar space. We have also increased the number of opportunities, training opportunities for the youth in St. Kitts and Nevis, because a lot of the times we want our youth to be trained so that they can take advantage of a lot of the jobs that are available. So just looking at the numbers alone tells us that a lot of people are working. And secondly, these type of programs are streamlined so that our youth can take advantage of these jobs. Many times we can't even fill a lot of the positions that are available, especially in the private sector. Sometimes I know a lot of people might come to the government, but in the private sector, sometimes it's a challenge to fill those positions. Now, we are going to chart a new strategy, which I'm going to announce in about 6 weeks, which will deal specifically with the youth. We're going to bring all of the programs geared towards youth under one umbrella. So I'm going to make the announcement in about 2 months. And this is going to be geared directly at youth to make sure that the issue of youth employment is dealt with separately to others. Why? Because youth are they have the highest risk of being unemployed, right? Because some people say, you don't have any experience, you haven't gone this and that. And sometimes I say, well, you want all well, how do you get the experience if you didn't hire them, right? So we are going to actually launch a program that's going to deal specifically with the youth and the economy. And that program, I think you would see. So I want to ask you, thank you for that question, and that is how we are going to deal specifically with that matter. On the matter of the Sustainable Island State, we are advancing significantly with the Sustainable Island State Agenda. For example, the Sustainable Island State Agenda has about 7 pillars, maybe 8 we might add, wealth creation might be the 7th one. On energy, we are now getting ready to launch the RFP for a 50 megawatt solar plant here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And in the next 2 days, we are hoping to close the procurement process for the geothermal on Nevis. I want to say that we are very, very advanced. I had not been speaking about it too much, but I can say that by the end of this month, we would have closed the procurement process for the geothermal on Nevis. So that would be the most advanced that process would have started. Geothermal is renewable energy, and it can produce the energy for St. Kitts and Nevis. The solar plant will produce energy for St. Kitts and Nevis. That is all part of the Sustainable Island State. The other one was water security. As I mentioned today, we are going to commission the desalination plant on the 24th of this month, and I hope the media will be there. We are also drilling. So when it comes to energy security and water security, we are well on our way. When it comes to healthcare and social services or social protection, as you know, we are in the process now of, among other things that I mentioned we have done in health, is to build a national hospital, which is ongoing, as we know. To build a hospital is very complex. It's the most complex thing to do. And of course, it has a lot of details and so forth. And all of these things are being sought through at this point. So That's from healthcare in terms of social protection as well. Um, and so when you look at food security, presently we are building out a greenhouse village. It will be about 26 greenhouses, and it will produce a significant amount of food. We are already cultivating about 100 plus acres in the Keon area, which I'll visit in the next couple of weeks so that the people can see where we are. So that is going to help significantly with our food security. From the technology side, I want to say that in June this year, we're on track to launch our national ID, electronic national ID. So you'll have it on your phone. And so you'll have a card. Everything will be on it. And you can put your card here. You can take your card and go into a bank and open an account with that national ID. It's different to the voter's ID. It's a national ID, but we say the voter's ID. When you go in there, that will be able to verify your address, verify who you are. So you can just use that to do all of your business transaction. And therefore, we hope that will speed up business and make things more convenient. As a matter of fact, we'll use the technology so that you can apply for your passport online. So you just apply for your passport online and then go for your biometrics and just pick up your passport. And we hope that we will have by further this year as well. In terms of technology, we just launched, tomorrow the app is being launched for consumer affairs, where you'll have it and you can go into a supermarket and see if the price is too high. And if the price is too high, you can take a picture of it or put in the information and it's received. You know, the supermarket has, a bottle of water for $20 when it should be $2.50. And then action will be taken and the price control officers will go around and just enter the data there. And then we analyze the data to see if there's price gouging and so forth and be able to monitor. So that is going to be launched tomorrow. And then we also have the electronic health record system, which was built by a company here. I'll make the announcement. I can't make the announcement yet until everything is sealed, but it's a multi-million-dollar contract that a company here with very young people, a lot of young people, will win. So you talk about youth unemployment, you'll see young people winning a contract of almost $7 million. They beat out all these big companies around the world. And what they produced was evaluated by international experts, and they won on merit. And they now will sign a contract for about $7 million for our electronic health record system. And it will be young people like you who will be making some real money, right? So that is from the technology side. So when you look at, our housing, we are nearly up to 1,000 houses now based on our policies. Some come through NHC. The others we have for first-time home owners, cutting the concessions, interest rates very low so that not everybody wants an NHC house. There are those who would say, look, I want to be able to build, but, not an NHC home. NHC homes are really nice. I'm just saying those who have other options. They can benefit from first-time home ownership, and they can also benefit from the lowest interest rate that the banks have ever had for mortgages in St. Kitts and Nevis. And we saw a boom in terms of housing construction. And that is why TDC made a profit, because a lot of their profit came from the construction industry. So we have seen a lot of houses built. So we have created the environment to stimulate home construction, and that has helped. So I just wanted to go through some of those matters in terms of the sustainable island state. That is why we increased the minimum wage to the highest in the OECS at this particular time, because wages, protect people and so forth. And so we wanted to do that. That is why we gave pension to our GAE workers in government for the first time in history. We have made health insurance lifelong for all civil servants and GAE workers with the government. So if you work for the government, you will have your insurance until God decides to take you from this earth, which was never done before. They used to take off people at 75 years old, but we have cut that so that people can have that sort of protection as they get older. So I mentioned healthcare, social programs, energy, water, investments, and so forth to show that the sustainable island state is well on track to be achieved, and we are very, very proud of that. But one of the areas where young people are doing well, and next, it's interesting. A set of young people just won another contract to develop the IT solutions for Ministry of Tourism. So these young people are stepping up. Another set of young people made the IT solutions for the ferry services. So the young people seems to be gravitating a lot towards the tech, making real money. Real money I'm talking here, not, not token. Real money because they're bringing real solutions. And that $7 million contract, multi-year contract will bring so much. And I know they have another 2 or 3 real contracts that they can win, and I'm sure that they'll be in a good position too, so that they can do well. And lastly, to say CWIT, which is the training area. The reason why we form CWIT so that young people can get certification in the technical fields. So you can go there and get certified as a carpenter, as a plumber, as an electrician, and this makes you more marketable in terms of being able to get a job. And so you can decide if you want to work here or you can travel. Nothing wrong with traveling if your skills are needed elsewhere. I can say just recently, a number of persons traveled to Turks and Caicos to work in the hotel industry at Sandals. The new Sandals have opened there. They came, they trained, they recruit, and now they have gone. Because across the region, you have to be so qualified. You can move around because it's one region. Sometimes, you live in the U.S. The U.S. is huge. You're in California, you might say, well, a job open up in New York. If we are seeking to come together as a region, if you are here in St. Kitts and Nevis and your skills are needed, let's say in Turks and Caicos, why not? One day, the people in Turks and Caicos may say, a position open up in St. Kitts, let's move. So the movement of people to fill this position is also part of the strategy of making sure that our youths can have opportunity as well. Prepare them for, multiple areas where they can work and use their skills accordingly. Thank you very much. Yes? Mm-hmm.
No, sir.
Good afternoon.
Lorraine Wilkin from WinFM. Mm-hmm. My first question relates to the CARICOM, the upcoming meeting. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to ask whether to date any representative from from Mr. Trump's administration has confirmed their attendance at the meeting, and if so, any indication of what their particular interest would be at this meeting, the topic of that? That's okay. One question.
Yeah, have it. Mm-hmm.
My second one is, has there been any follow-up discussion in respect of the pause in the immigration status? And have any of the agreed deportees landed here yet?
Okay, good. Right.
That's it.
So let me start from the last one. Secondly, no deportees have landed here. I know there is an American aircraft on the tarmac, and people are saying, I see all sort of news going around that deportees might be here. So your question is well put, and I want to answer directly. No deportees have come to St. Kitts and Nevis. As you know, and I have said it to the country, that there was an agreement with respect to CARICOM nationals based on what is the status with immigration. And so we have reached that with the US. But more of that. But I can say clearly today that no deportees have come to St. Kitts and Nevis. Secondly, every year, St. Kitts and Nevis does a program with Taiwan and the United States, the Southern Command of the United States Air Force. So this is not new. We call it LAMAT, Leeward Island Medical Assistance, right? Leeward Island Medical Assistant Program, LAMAT, L-A-M-A-T. And the Southern Command send their doctors to St. Kitts and Nevis. This has been happening for the last 3 years. So this is not new. And LAMAT is going to be launched very, very soon. And so the Southern Command is already coming in, all right? I think people are heightened because of what is happening in the region, but if they reflect, they will recognize that this aircraft like this come from time to time. However, I can say that we look forward for the medical professionals, the healthcare professionals from the Southern Command of the United States military in association with Taiwan and St. Kitts and Nevis, that LAMAT will take place. So it's not new. It has happened before, and it continues to happen. And when they come, they do a lot of work for us. I can tell you, they would come and they would fix all of our equipment that need fixing, for example. Tremendous. They will do certain surgeries for us that are complicated surgeries. So we will go meet the people, line up. We'll check people's ear, people's eyes, so that they can get medical service that might be very challenging to get because we may not have the specialists, or there might be a financial constraint on these persons. And LAMAT does that. So I want to thank the United States of America through its Southern Command, and also the Republic of China, Taiwan, for this excellent medical assistance program. So I think I answered that last question. Now, in terms of CARICOM, every time there's CARICOM, you would invite the United States of America, Europe, your international partners, and so forth. And then they would determine who they would send to that meeting. So you send these invitations, of course, and then they will determine who they would send. So I can say that the American will have representation at the meeting, and they always have representation at the meeting. We have not determined what the agenda between the U.S. specifically yet, but of course we'll discuss matters of the region and the U.S. and the relationship and other matters that are happening. But I can tell you that the U.S. will send their representative as they are accustomed. They will inform us as to the level of that representation. And based on the level of representation, you'll manage it in a particular way, right? You'll manage it in a particular way for many reasons, right? Many logical and, I would say, plausible reasons as to why you'll manage it in a particular way until such moment. But I can tell you the United States will be represented, Europe will be represented, other international partners will be represented. You have representation from Saudi Arabia, representation from the UAE, representation from the African continent, North America, and so forth. As to the specific ones, they will inform us when, or we will say when we know it's appropriate to say as well. But yes, there will be representation from the US and others. And so I think those were your two questions in terms of the agenda. That agenda continues to be a live document, and we're still, of course, finalizing that. And some things are discussed very private inside, but what comes out would be the outcome after those discussions, which would be shared with the public.
Yes, Prime Minister Drew, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon.
Avery Lywood, Freedom FM. Two questions. One, with the tightening of the economic blockade on Cuba causing electricity and food shortages, and with Jamaica having already called some of their students home, can you provide an update on the well-being of our students currently studying there and any measures being taken to support them? That's one. And then two, in light of recent media reports of yet another U.S. military strike in Caribbean waters and the growing buildup of U.S. naval and air assets in the region, including carriers, destroyers, and ongoing operations, described as part of Operation Southern Spear, what is the government of St. Kitts and Nevis's position on this increased military activity so close to home, and how does it assess the implications for regional security?
Right. Thank you very much. With respect to in good stead, and that if there's any issue at any point that we have to address, then we will definitely address it. And if our students would have to leave that, but those discussions have not come up as yet. I've also met with the Cuban ambassador to St. Kitts and Nevis, and he said things were being done to secure the students. But we continue to monitor the situation, and I will continue to stay in touch with our ambassador there, who is assessing the situation, and the ambassador of Cuba to St. Kitts and Nevis to see when there will be what the developments will be, and that will dictate the decisions. So we are watching the situation and monitoring the situation very, very closely. So I will say that. We have sent help to our students before. When I was not in government, my foundation sent support to the Cuban students because there were some challenges even before this. And even since then, I've been in government, we have sent support. And my foundation also helped as well. From the government, from my foundation, others, to send help to our students in Cuba. But of course, the situation has changed and we are monitoring it very, very closely. Now, with respect to Southern Spear, and there was, I think, some activities between in St. Vincent and St. Lucia. The prime ministers, they have not sent out any specific information on that matter as yet, and we are hoping to see what is, what's that all about from their perspective, being the countries directly involved. So we continue to monitor that situation as well. Let me say that recently the commissioner and the commander of the Defense Force, Major Sutton, traveled for high-level meetings with respect to the security issues that are taking place in the Caribbean. So that's one. And that interface helped tremendously in understanding and putting our, having discussions around the matter. But I can say that this matter, I'm sure, will be a matter that will be discussed at CARICOM in the next week or so, when all leaders would have met and we would discuss this matter and as a region determine where we would go on this particular matter. This matter is not just a St. Kitts Nevis matter, it is a regional matter. But of course, we always want to maintain our security here in the region. There are challenges, there are limitations, but CARICOM, I know, will continue to engage. And next week, we will engage more profoundly when all of us meet face to face to discuss these security matters.
Good afternoon, everyone. Source. Okay, that's better. Good afternoon, Prime Minister.
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
Prime Minister, I came with the intention to ask some completely different questions, but as happens sometimes,
Yes.
directions change. I want to ask about this whole question of population, but not from the have more children angle, although you're encouraging it.
Right.
The Constitution provides for a number of pathways to citizenship. It is because of these avenues to citizenship under Chapter 8, I believe, 92. And then there's a section in there, residency. It speaks to Parliament having the ability to determine persons who can receive citizenship. In fact, what the Constitution says is that if you have satisfied certain requirements, you are entitled to citizenship by registration. So I am wondering if not so much for OECS citizens because of the arrangements that already exist and the ease of movement existing within OECS, but CARICOM specifically, has your administration given any thought to perhaps CARICOM citizens more broadly, and especially going into this meeting next week, to considering making a pathway, which I would believe falls under Section 92(1)H of the Constitution, where Parliament itself can determine persons who are eligible for citizenship. I say this because we have in our mind that the Constitution says that there's a residency requirement of 14 years. It doesn't actually say is a residency requirement of 14 years. What it says is, if you are a Commonwealth citizen and you have resided here for 14 years continuously prior to the date of application, you are entitled to apply for citizenship. It might encourage more persons to stay and to start families and businesses and so on if they don't think that that 14 years, quote unquote, is an encumbrance to doing so. And in addition to which you have to pay work permits and all of these other things that can be prohibitive to persons wanting to stay in the country even though they're comfortable here, but it's just not cost effective to do so. Have you considered that as a means to increasing the population as well? Because we have so many CARICOM citizens who are already here among us. And when we look at the Citizenship by Investment program, what we have essentially done is carved out a special way for persons to become citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis without satisfying a quote-unquote residency requirement. The other question I would want to ask has to do with the issue of prostate cancer that you brought up earlier. One of the things that has prohibited men from taking their prostate health seriously is the fact that there is that digital exam. A lot of men have an aversion to going to a urologist and being examined in that way. there is a prostate-specific antigen blood test which is now available that can be done. Are you aware if it is available in St. Kitts and Nevis, which might increase the likelihood of men being diagnosed early for prostate cancer and enhance the mortality outcome for persons with prostate cancer?
Right, those are very, very insightful questions. I'll answer the last one first. At each clinic in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have a men's program. So we call it men's clinic. So there's a specific day for men's clinic. On that day, you can go in and get your prostate test done, the PSA, free of cost. So presently, it is available. Guess what? Our men are not accessing it enough. When you have the women clinic, oh my God, they're full. But the men's clinic. So we think we really need to bring men together so that men can dialogue and talk and, and support each other. Let me tell you, people think men don't need support and men are always macho. One has nothing to do with the other as far as I'm concerned. Do you know what is the longest line in St. Kitts and Nevis for healthcare? When the free prostate test is held at the lodge. The line is from inside all the way out. Men. And the reason why I think men go, because men feel that that is a safe space. And when they're going to meet more men, and men can talk to men in men language and support each other. And so we need that space for men. And men need to learn that from women. Women create those spaces for themselves, and that is wonderful. It's a good model. We know we need men to do it as well, so that they can get in groups and talk. Talk like men about prostate matters. And how is it you could get a line with scores of men lining up to take the finger? The finger is not the problem. The problem is the support. Because they feel a sense of support and a safe space is created, the men are willing to subject themselves to that. So when a man go in and do it, he come out, boy, I went in and do it. So he's telling the next man, you could do it too, and they support each other. And so we need men to support men, because I realize it is the support that is the issue and not the finger itself, right? Because, yes, so they know they can get the blood test, more will come, but that is the point again, because they know they can do a blood test, I'm telling you. But why is it they're not going for the blood test? But on a particular day where a lot of men will gather, they're not only going for the blood test, they're willing to go for the digital exam, the finger test. Think about it. Very interesting. But I know it's about support. They feel a sense of community and a safe space. And that is what drives them to it. So forming the prostate health foundation can bring men so that men can support each other and encourage each other. And I think it would help tremendously. With respect to the population, and you are correct, because migration has to be one of the ways, of course, inward, has to be one of the ways in which you can grow a population. Of course, you have to manage it. With respect to the time that you have to be here and so forth, I think that we have discussed those, but those are broader discussions we'll want to have with our people first. You will need to do town hall meetings. You need to do consultation with the people and ask the people, in an effort to, increase our population, this is one of the ways that we can consider. So I can clearly say that this has been discussed, and we have reached the decision that in order to do something like this, it would be wise to consult with the people. But you have brought a valid point, which is an extremely good point in terms of how we can attract more people here in St. Kitts and Nevis. All right. All right.
Just before we wrap up, Prime Minister, I'll invite you to for your closing remarks,
Yes,
and then we end
right.
today's session of the roundtable.
Thank you very much, First Secretary, Mr. Javan Libard. I want to thank the press for being here this afternoon and asking the questions that are to be asked. I create this forum so that we can sit and talk to each other in a sense. So today we dealt with the Frigate Bay Golf Course, where I shared information, the health matters with respect to maternal deaths and support to breast cancer foundations and the move to establish a prostate health foundation. We have also mentioned significant renovations to the Cardin home and spend some time on the CARICOM matters and the geopolitical matters. So I want to say to our people that this government will continue to work and work in your best interests to establish a sustainable island state where our people can live well. This government will continue to be transparent and open so that we can have the best, I would say, scenario for us to be a successful St. Kitts and Nevis. So at the end of the day, I will say that the cabinet of St. Kitts and Nevis, and I would like to thank all of our people in the cabinet of St. Kitts and Nevis, my fellow colleagues who are working along with me as the Prime Minister to bring these. And I would like to thank the people of St. Kitts and Nevis for their continued trust and confidence in us as an administration. I am happy again to announce that in just a short week or so, we will commission the first publicly owned or government-owned desalination plant, which is already producing 2 million gallons per day of potable water. This is the largest. This will be the largest plant in St. Kitts, period. Not the first, because there's some private ones, but the largest in St. Kitts, period. So we continue to build out St. Kitts and Nevis so that we can be that sustainable island state. So with that, I say good afternoon and God bless all of us. Thank you.
With the media in efforts to ensure that their questions or concerns are addressed. We continue to extend gratitude to all the platforms that facilitate the live airing of the roundtable, ensuring that the public and our citizens within the diaspora and locally, of course, remain at front and center of what is happening in the government. To our listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in. To the members of the media, thank you for being here. This was the roundtable. See you next time.
I've always noticed it, but I've never thought to myself. It seems so obvious now, but I've never thought to myself, oh yeah, you can't tell Rihanna's story without talking about Barbados.
Exactly.
The music, the way she sees the world, the way she interacts with the world, the fact that she's still, a citizen of Barbados, like all of these things inform how she goes.
And that she still has a Bajan accent.
That's true.
Yeah.
So if I said that phrase to her, she'd know what it means?
Of course.
So wait, how do I say it? You can't...
You still have
the fair. How do you say the phrase?
Oh, dying fair.
Dying fair.
Oh, you got to treat people fairly.
But you said dying fair.
Dying fair.
Dying fair. I'm gonna work.
But you have a good Bajan accent already.
I'm working with yours. Dying fair. I'm gonna learn it. I'm just gonna say it to people, dying fair, and I'm gonna get there. Rihanna, you didn't invite me to your party. Dying fair.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now we're on. This is What Now with Trevor Noah. Prime Minister Mia Mottley, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Trevor.
I was thinking of every possible question I could ask you because you're one of the most brilliant thinkers I know. You're also one of the most original human beings I've ever met. And as I was going through everything I could think of, I went, there's one pressing question I've always wondered and I've always wanted to ask you. And that is, does it ever bother you that most people think Rihanna's the prime minister of your country.
I wish you was. Then I'd be able to spend more time on the beach. No, Rihanna is phenomenal. I mean, look, Rihanna has made Barbados known in places and with people that would not otherwise have known it. I mean, we like to think that everybody knows about Barbados. That's what happens when you come from a small nation.
I know what it's like.
But
yeah.
the truth is that she really has extended the boundaries for us, and she has defined excellence. And I want to speak to it because people don't appreciate that I genuinely feel that she is the businesswoman and artist that she is because of how she was raised.
Huh. Say more. What
Barbados
do you
is
mean
a
by
place. Barbados is a place that social justice matters. If you go to Beijing, the first thing they tell you, man, you can't unfair that body. That ain't fair. Everything is about fairness, justice. And Rihanna, when she decided to go into business, said, look, I'm going to do a makeup company. Because guess what? Everybody's been doing makeup for certain colors and certain hues. I'm going to do it for everybody because everybody matters. Everybody must be seen. I keep talking about seeing, hearing, and feeling people. She did it. Then she wasn't satisfied with that. She said, I'm going to do a lingerie company. And then you look at the shows, and the lingerie is for every shape and size. Those who are fit, those who have been maimed, those who are disfigured, for everybody. And that sense of inclusion, that sense of social justice that was instilled in her from birth, that was reinforced in her in school, is what she's living. So when people ask, why is she successful? Because she's authentic, because she's real, because she's living out what really matters. And that sense of fairness and inclusion, the world buys into with her.
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, man.
I've always noticed it, but I've never thought to myself. It seems so obvious now, but I've never thought to myself, oh yeah, you can't tell Rihanna's story without talking about Barbados.
Exactly.
The music, the way she sees the world, the way she interacts with the world, the fact that she's still, a citizen of Barbados, like all of these things inform how she goes.
And that she still has a Bajan accent.
That's true.
Yeah.
So if I said that phrase to her, she'd know what it means?
Of course.
So wait, how do I say it? You can't.
You still have
the fair. How do you say the phrase?
Oh, dying fair.
Dying fair.
Or you gotta treat people fairly.
But you said dying fair.
Dying fair.
Dying fair. I'm gonna work.
But you have a good Bajan accent already.
I'm working with yours. Dying fair. I'm gonna learn it. I'm just gonna say it to people, dying fair, and I'm gonna get there. Rihanna, you didn't invite me to your party. Dying fair.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now we're on.
And tell her next time, you see, when you invite me, then I can eventually say we is we.
We is we?
We is we.
We is we. I like this.
That's
we is
the most
we.
powerful 3 words.
That's the most powerful. Okay. We is we. Dying fair. I almost feel like that's a perfect place to start a conversation, because if we think of Rihanna as a concept and as an idea, you have a single human who has had an outsized impact on the world. Yeah. They came from a place that many would have considered insignificant. They started in a place that many people would have considered unremarkable. And yet there's no denying that music, fashion, beauty has now been shaped by this person.
Absolutely.
I feel like your journey and the journey of Barbados has been very similar.
Truth is that the journey of Barbados before has been there for good and bad reasons. And let's start with the bad.
Yeah.
Barbados was settled. In fact, this is 400 years this year that the British first landed. But the history was written that they were the first, although we now know that people were probably there who came from Europe. But the story that nobody told was the Amerindians who lived there for centuries, and who at the time when the British came, there was evidence of settlements and life, but nobody had been living on the island at the time. I start there really to carry you to the fact that the modern story of Barbados then is shaped by the British conquest. And they started a parliament in 1639. It's the 3rd oldest in the Commonwealth. And they passed a law which really is something that we are not proud of at all. And it became the structure for modern racism and institutional racism as we know. And it was the bedrock for slavery. It was the 1661 Slave Code passed by the Barbados Parliament. It was followed in Jamaica, it was followed in South Carolina, it was followed in Georgia, it was followed in Antigua. Almost all of the countries in the Americas used that 1661 slave code, which denied the humanity of black people as the basis for their thing. The British treated Barbados as the jewel in the crown. It was the producer of sugar. It was, for them, the earner of great wealth.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was also the place by which they understood how to control and denigrate black people as slaves. So that we feel, as modern independent Barbadians, that we have a duty to pay forward. And that duty to pay forward is as a result of that history. Now, there were other things that happened at the time because of how important the colony was to the British. So after King Charles took back over from Cromwell, ironically King Charles, he gave some of the planters in Barbados land in the Carolinas. And therefore, there is a huge impact of Bajans and Bajan slaves moving into the Carolinas. And the linkages between Charleston and Speightstown in the north of Barbados go back 370, 75
That's
years.
fascinating.
Yeah. And there is also a belief that we need to do more research with the Gula people and to really see the linkages between the Carolinas and Barbados. In addition, prior to that, when the Royalists tried to fight against Cromwell, they had the Charter of Barbados in 1651, which they say 125 years before independence, the Declaration of Independence in the USA, really spoke to a lot of the same things in terms of no taxation without representation and a lot of the same things that came to be discussed here. So that you see Barbados popping up in a supersized way throughout history. And in a sense, therefore, I don't try to claim it for Rihanna or myself or others today as the country, because it really has always had that tradition. Yesterday on my social media, a picture came up of the father of independence, Errol Barrow, and his wife meeting President Lyndon Johnson here in D.C. And the story goes at that time that President Johnson said to this prime minister of a newly independent country, the Organization of American States, the U.S. will pay your dues to join. And Mr. Barrow said, sir, with all due respect, where I come from, if you can't afford the dues, you don't join the club. I give you that story, as well as in his first speech to the United Nations, he declared that we would be friends of all, satellites of none. So there's a strong sense of dignity, a strong sense of we have a responsibility to do things and to give, especially because of what we went through. And that does not mean that we are more powerful than we are, because at the end of the day, size still does matter. But on things of thought, leadership and dignity count us.
Because I mean, when you talk about size, I think it is important to understand the size of Barbados. What's the current population?
It's probably about 270,000.
Okay, yeah, that was 300,000 was what I thought.
300, yeah.
Just under 300,000.
We actually regrettably have declined, and we're right now going through a whole conversation about building back up the population.
Is that because people have been leaving?
Part of it is that, but part of it is that we've done a damn good job at family planning. Family planning has been strong in the country from the 1950s.
You know, this is one of the things that like feels like one of the greatest conundrums that the world is facing.
Yeah.
Right? I was having a conversation with my mom about this.
Okay.
So my mom was asking me what I think about marriage, when I'm going to get married, you know, all of these questions, but not pressing, but pressing. And
as moms do.
As moms do. Yeah, as moms do. And then I said to her, one of the things I've been pondering is how much of our advancement has limited the natural progression of what it is to be human, because now you have to like choose to make a family. Back in the day, if we think about, this is only in this century.
People didn't think, they just did.
You just did, and you couldn't, I mean, obviously there's like old, I've seen like ancient prophylactics and things, but for the most part, people just had kids because they had kids. Like, how do you begin to think about this idea? We see people saying, oh, populations are declining here, populations are declining there. Is it the threat that some people say it is to nations?
It is. I mean, look, in the Caribbean, the first thing I did when we won government in 2018 was to create a National Population Commission. Because having served as Minister of Education many years ago, I realized just from the numbers going into schools that we had a problem. In those days, I had about 4,300 kids every year.
Yeah.
When I came into office in 2018, it was down to about 2,500, 2,600, 2,700, something like that at the beginning. And now the ones going in infants A are like 2,200. So that you can clearly see the sharp decline in 30 years. And if I go to other countries in the region, let me give you context. Guyana, that is the fastest growing country in the world. Guyana is... Yeah, because of the oil.
Okay, got it.
But Guyana's population, in spite of it being the same size as the United Kingdom is 65 million.
Yeah.
Guyana is struggling to be 1 million. Let's go to Belize. Belize is the same size as Israel. Israel is 8 million. Belize is 400 and something thousand. Suriname is just larger than the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
The Netherlands is 17 million. Suriname is 580,000. And if I take Barbados, Singapore grew itself literally by reclamation of land. I think they've gone up by 30 or 40%.
Yeah.
They're more or less a little bigger than Barbados. They're 5 million. I'm struggling to be at 300,000. So you have this predicament that other than Haiti, almost every country in the Caribbean community is underpopulated, including Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, all of us.
Do you think it's because people are able to choose to have kids, or is it because people are choosing to have fewer kids as their standard of living goes up?
I think it's a combination of reasons.
How does it work?
I think it's a combination of reasons. I think some of it was emigration.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of it is more people choosing not to have children or not having children for whatever reasons.
And then what do you say to them if that's the, as a leader, because now you have the predicament and it's a confusing one. You need more people. Do you tell people to have people, or do you?
Well, I'd like them to, but the reality is that I still need people before they do it the pleasurable way. So while they have pleasure in doing it, we're going to need that. I still need skills now. And when you start to see the shortage of skills, then you begin to realize this is a real constraint on stability and growth.
I would love for you to help us get an insight into thinking about the world like a leader should versus how we think about the world as the passive participants of what's happening. What you just said, we often read about, like everyone reads about it. They go, I was reading that there's not enough workers coming into this country. There's not enough people. Japan is experiencing a decline, Germany, et cetera, et cetera. When you're with world leaders or when you're working on these problems, is there a light that is shining in one direction? Is it immigration? Is it something that we're not thinking about? Like where are the possible solutions and how do you think of it?
I fear that the conversation about immigration and migration is rooted in racism. Rather than rooted in the needs of a country. I think that people are fearful of becoming a minority in their own country, and that's natural. You can't think that. But at the same time, without the influx of people, you're not going to be able to stabilize or get the growth that you need as a country. And one of the problems is that in the world, we have worked out how to move money. Nobody worries about how to move money globally. But as soon as you start talking about moving people, everybody gets nervous. And in December 2018, I think, at the OACP, Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States in Nairobi, I made the point, and I continue to make it, that we need a proper deal for migrants. And this notion of people having to drown just because they want a better life, when countries elsewhere actually need them and can provide opportunity and dignity to them. Something is fundamentally wrong. And regrettably, that's one of the things I can say we unfair in people.
We
You
definitely are.
understand? We are unfairing people, and we are seeing people die unnecessarily when we can have a structured program. And part of it comes back then to the Sustainable Development
Yeah.
Goals, the SDGs, because most people don't want to leave their own countries. They leave because there's a
Because
reason.
they have to.
They
Yes.
have to.
Yeah.
They're either running from something or running to
towards
something.
Yeah.
And if we could get a basic agreement globally that there's certain things that we must provide people. Basic education, which means from pre-primary to secondary. I mean, I'd love to say post-secondary and tertiary, but let's
But just
start,
starting at the base level, everyone in the world
must have a basic education that allows them to learn at any stage of their life again. That basic healthcare for the very basic things.
Right.
The opportunity to play football or cricket or whatever sport you like, or road tennis, which I hear people talk about pickleball. I want you to come to Barbados and help me promote road tennis.
Okay.
Because road tennis can play in this room.
Wait. What's it called?
Road tennis.
Road tennis.
Yeah.
And what is road tennis?
So the guys at home made these rackets out of plywood.
Okay.
The net is effectively about 6-9 inches off the ground.
So it's like knee height.
So if you're not fit, you can't play it. So even I got a little trouble sometimes. And then a tape ball. And you can play it. It's like the size of a table tennis board, but it's played on the road.
On the road.
And that's it. So it's the most
this
perfect
feels like a
sport for inner city areas and ghettos.
Where there's no cars.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
even
Prime
when there are
Minister,
cars, no.
How are we playing road tennis?
So you stop, you pull up the net, the car passes, and you move. I swear to God. When you come to Barbados, you'll see.
I'm actually going to come and see. So it's funny. In South Africa, we used to, most places in the world, friends of mine who grew up in like Harlem have the same stories that I have growing up in South Africa in the townships, where you would just close the road, you would play the game, and then when a car needed to come through, it would come through. But I think if I'm pitching this as like an Olympic sport, it's going to be tough to pitch this idea that we're closing main. But okay, we'll get it. I'll come to Barbados and
get it. For the Olympics, we leave out the cars. But
I think that's what'll make it interesting. If you want to get viewers, you leave the cars. That's a real gold medal.
We could do that too.
Yeah, if you finish the match, you get a medal. I love that you bring up the idea of thinking of new ways to think, because that's probably what inspires me most about you. Is whenever I see you speak, and whenever I've been lucky enough to have like 2 conversations, I think, with you. Every time I've left our conversation thinking, oh wow. Nothing is fixed. There's new ideas in and around everything. Like immigration. Yeah. We all think of immigration as this fixed idea. It was people going somewhere, and then that was it. Do you think there's ever a world where, like you say with money, do you think there's ever a world where we find a way for people to go work and then go back to their countries?
We need to. Look, people used to do that in a more structured way. But because the world governments haven't created the opportunities. Look, we create movement, we create treaties that allow for movement of money. We create opportunities for people to invest. But we just don't see people and feel that it's important enough for us to create a virtual community where you need these skills. I mean, look, in a very small way, you've had the farm labor program out of Canada. The Caribbean people have gone to for years. They go, they work, they come back. It's a structured thing. The money is sent back.
Do you see that benefits both sides?
Well. Yeah, okay. It works well because it helps the farmers in Canada, and it helps the persons at home who don't have work at the time,
right,
who have an opportunity.
So get the labor where the labor's needed, and then get the money where the money's needed, and so you're just bridging the gap, basically.
And technology actually allows us to do it in a very seamless way now, so that, to my mind, if we just rolled up our sleeves a little bit and gave it a little effort, we could do a lot more. Let's take Africa. Every time I go to Africa, the amount of young men you see on the roads, just waiting for work, looking for opportunities. And I'm saying, but there are other parts of the world that are in serious need of people. And I'm not talking basic menial labor. I'm talking skills at all levels.
Yeah.
And I genuinely feel that if we can create the right framework for the movement of skills and labor, that the world would be a far better place than it is today.
When you share these ideas with other world leaders, do they see the possibility, or like I've always wondered, when you're having these conversations internally, are world leaders being pushed by the people, or are they the ones pushing the people? Which way does it really go?
You have the ability to push them, and I don't mean that facetiously. World leaders are politicians. Most of them who operate in democracies rely on people's votes. And the people have the ability to shape the work of their leaders, as well as leaders have the ability to nudge the population. I genuinely feel that there are things that we are going to have to do at a popular level globally in order to be able to see the status quo of power move.
In what way?
Why would they change what they're doing if it's working for them?
Okay, yeah.
You understand? And what we're asking, in fact, is a change in the power relationships and the status quo of how people are treated when they move beyond borders. And that is going to require a little more effort. Look at the conversations that are happening across North America, across Europe. Look at them. And regrettably, in some other countries, it's becoming par for the course. But could the USA be the USA if it was not for migrants? It's immigrant labor.
Yeah.
It's the dream of the US.
Fundamental story, yeah.
That's right, that anybody can come and be whoever they want to be in this country. That was the seed of its greatness. And then let's look at biology. I didn't do much biology in school, but any instrument, any organism that closes in and that doesn't open up dies, atrophies. So I really, really feel that the problem that we're facing is the browning of the world.
The browning of the world.
Right. Ralph Gonsalves, who's Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, says it all the time, and he's absolutely correct. It's the browning of the world. So that, you see, when you let too many people come in and people start to mix, in a sense, everybody's beginning to get the same color and the same type of thing, and that frightens people. Because love knows no boundaries, does it?
That's true. That's true. I mean, I'm sitting here.
Yeah.
So, but I you know what I sometimes think it is? I think us seeing the browning of the world as one of the factors is completely correct. But I often wonder if this is not a natural byproduct of people experiencing a standard of living that declines over time, and then they start to point somewhere.
Yeah.
Do you know? Because like, if you look at Europe itself, some of the biggest wars that have ever been fought only involved white people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were just fighting with themselves about themselves. And so whenever I read these stories throughout history, I go, oh, wow, it doesn't matter. Brown is almost the easy thing for somebody to pick on now. But when you get rid of that, someone will find something else and somebody will find something else. And so I almost wonder.
I think it's a combination.
Yeah?
I think that there is a definite contribution with respect to inequity.
Yeah.
And the fact that people who could have believed that this was the type of life that they could aspire to now realize that that is now beyond them. I mean, in this country, you have it with the industrialization that left. And therefore, strong, credible, dignified jobs were all of a sudden taken from people. And those jobs sustained families. But let us not forget as well that there is still, regrettably, an eye for differences in the world.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And I think the combination of all of those things has helped to create that sense of almost despair. And the despair has led then to anger, and the anger has led to shutting out people and focusing in. But tell me when in history any civilization has conquered or survived by shutting in. And any living organism survives by shutting in. It doesn't work. And regrettably, we have to get worse before we get better, before we realize that it is a crisis and that the survival of all depends on the well-being and welfare of all, as happened in COVID.
Yeah, those are the only times when people start to think differently about the world that they're in.
Yep.
We'll be right back after this. Let's look at Barbados in isolation, because I think it's the same problem that many countries are going to face. thinking about their populations, how they replenish them, how they keep skills, how they keep growing sustainably. Have you seen any countries that have gotten it right? And have you seen, an example where you go, that is the way that I would hope we can bring people in, we can sustainably grow it?
Canada has probably done a better job than most of the
And what did they
countries. I think that they found a way of recognizing that they need to bring in people, but at the same time, they treat them as Canadians. The U.S. had it right before, too. I mean, for whatever reason, the U.S. is in a schism as it relates to migration. And I'm not passing judgment on them. I'm just noticing that, you do grow and you do succeed if you create those opportunities.
Yeah.
I think you were absolutely correct in also making the point that in those parts of the country where people were denied or didn't have the ability to move at the same level and to increase their quality of life at the same level, they then assume that it's because of a foreigner. It's because when Angela Merkel brought in 1 million people from
Syria, when it was
Syria. And it was like a shot of adrenaline because she understood that Germany was facing the worst possible future, a declining and aging population. The irony is that's what we're facing in most Caribbean countries. The ECLAT agency predicts that in Barbados, that 1 in every 2 people could be over the age of 65 by the year 2050.
1 in every 2?
That's crazy.
Oh, that's not a great ratio.
Exactly. And in the case of Jamaica and Trinidad, 39-40%, somewhere around there. So this is a real issue that we have to solve now because we're 25 years away from that point in time. At the same time, the Caribbean is a microcosm of almost most of the larger civilizations of the world.
It really is.
Not all, but most of them. So you have African, you have European, you have Asian in every sense, Indian, Chinese, you have Middle Eastern, and you have the traditional Indians, most of whom were taken out. But in St. Vincent and in Belize, you still have the Garifuna. In Dominica, you have the Caribs. So you still have a few remaining. And I like to believe that the Caribbean, because of our history, has a story to tell to the rest of the world and an example to share with the rest of the world. We've not been perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but for the most part, we have been able to bring about development to our people in the post-colonial environment that sees people, that feels people, that hears people, that recognizes that, look, okay, we need to provide education, shelter, housing, etc.
Yeah.
We haven't done it for all yet, but we're on that pathway. Not everybody's gotten on the train yet, but a lot have. And when you start to compare it to other countries and other regions in the world, you begin to see that. The difficulty has come in that in many instances, small states global trade, but can't have the same one-size-fits-all prescription. You can't do it in a family, far less a country, far less a global community. And if we can get that, so many things that we've been trying to solve will find themselves in place. And part of the difficulty is that the new world post-1945 was still remade in an imperial order. So that all the talk about sovereignty and independent countries, you're independent so long as you do as I say. Not even as I do. Because when they told us don't do quantitative easing and don't print money, the truth is when COVID hit, what did the developed world do?
Oh, they printed
the G7
money.
printed and printed and printed and quantitative easing. And, so we have to find a way of letting some air, some oxygen, some transparency, some light, and to begin to see that the one-size-fits-all rule will not work, and that you have to be able to give a little elbow room. Not a lot, but a little elbow room for us to do the things that we need to do to keep our people alive, to keep our people prospering, to not cause our people to want to get into the things that you complain about globally in terms of migration or crime or all of the other things.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by the, like, sometimes what I think is very short-term thinking from some of the bigger nations, in that they'll often think about mass migration, but they don't seem to wonder why people are leaving the place that they're in. The first part of me goes like, maybe it's just an arrogance.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah?
they do things that literally shoot themselves in the foot sometimes.
In what way?
In 2006 and 7, there was a big debate about the International Criminal Court and the fact that the ICC, that U.S. heads of state and army, military people did not want to be subject to prosecution.
Right.
And they went around the world trying to get countries to agree that they should be exempted. And we in the Caribbean said, hey, we hear you, but one, it don't make sense because this is intended for all people.
Yep.
But two, even if it wasn't, this is the idea of the former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, A.N.R. Robinson. And as a matter of solidarity, as well as principle, we can't do it. They said, well, if you don't do it, we're going to withdraw all military aid from your countries.
Wow.
I said, okay, that's not a wise thing to do, but
I mean, that's
we
also not
talked for a year,
Yeah.
18 months, and eventually they said, we're going to do it anyhow. What happens? Nature abhors a vacuum. China, who never had any relationship with any of the militaries in the region really, then stepped in and developed a relationship and provided training and equipment and things thereafter. Does that make sense to a country that is so frightened for China?
See, when you're saying that, I wish more people understood, especially Western nations, you know, quote unquote. I wish they understood how many of the problems they're experiencing are created in a cycle.
Yep.
You know, so friends and I were talking the other day, you can't talk about 9/11 without talking about Osama bin Laden. You can't talk about it without talking about Al-Qaeda. But then you can't talk about it without talking about the CIA, which you then can't talk about without talking about the US and what it was trying to do about communism.
Yep.
And now many of those people will go, oh, we did the wrong thing. But the effects are felt so many years later. And what you're saying is the same. If you watch the news in America, if you watch the news in the UK, let's say the BBC, they'll very quickly say, China's expanding. We've seen China here, and China's in Africa, and China's in the Caribbean, China's doing this, But I don't think I've seen any news reports that say, well, the US opened the door for China and the US reneged.
The North Atlantic countries have not necessarily treated to the issue of development in the post-colonial era as well as they could have. We talk about official development assistance being 0.7% of GDP. Most countries don't even observe that. But for countries...
As in that's a portion that they're supposed to contribute
to globally.
To developing nations. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But countries like my own have been said, oh, you're middle income, you don't need money from us. So we effectively don't get any aid from the USA or from Britain or whatever other than a part of a regional study or a regional thing that is done. And that's one of the things that we've been arguing, and I'll come to that in a bit because that's at the core of a lot of the development issues, that we are asked to be able to access capital from the official financial institutions, international financial institutions, on the basis of historic GDP per capita, which really doesn't, I tell people that is like taking my blood pressure 2 years ago to determine if I'm going to have a stroke today. It's completely irrelevant. You understand?
That's a great analogy.
So that what matters, because in 72 hours, a hurricane can hit me.
Yeah.
And I can have wipeout risk. Now, a hurricane can hit in Florida. You don't have wipeout risk. A hurricane hits in the Bahamas or Dominica, it's gone.
Yeah.
And instead of dealing with qualitative issues in education, you're now dealing with basic access to schools again. So we make the point that the North Atlantic countries, for whatever reason, had the Caribbean and a lot of the other small island developing states in the Pacific, etc., in a certain prism. This is how they view you. This is how they're going to relate to you. And China and India and others come along and say, oh, these are some of your real development needs. Oh, you need a gymnasium. Oh, you need help in building a port.
Yeah, you need a road.
You need help in doing roads. We're going to lend you the money at 3% or 2% or 4%. Who else is lending you that money? Nobody. So I think that, remember what I said, we want to be friends of all, satellites of none. So we're not looking to be anybody's pawn. But at the same time, we're not looking to be disadvantaged or unfair because you don't believe I should talk to my neighbor when in truth and fact, the neighbor's done me nothing. And then secondly, when I look at your circumstances, you have greater exposure with your treasuries to them than I have. The Chinese hold 4% of my debt. It can't do me. It can do me less than a hurricane can do me. There are others who hold a far greater percentage of my debt, and the Chinese hold far greater percentages of debt in the developed world,
Right.
in the G7 countries.
It almost feels like a contradiction then in some
It
ways.
is.
It's almost like some of the larger countries are basically restricting smaller countries from engaging in the best way, or even in an autonomous way, in the way that they feel is best for
But
them.
you see, you get it. So why do you get it? Because you've been exposed now to the facts. Tell me where in large developed countries are you exposing your population to the facts? Or is it purely an opiate diet that you give them with respect to entertainment and dulling down the senses and no real discussion? You look at the news at night and it's the same 5 stories being done on every channel when you look at this country or Britain or wherever. And the Jewish rabbi who I really truly respected, Jonathan Sachs, used to be chief rabbi in London, wrote a series of books, and I'd encourage you to read them all. But one is The Dignity of Difference, where he talks about moving from broadcasting to narrowcasting. And of course, we all know it. I saw your last podcast on the impact of these devices on children.
Yeah.
And if you ask me one of the things that worries me at night, this is it. And I think left up to me, how can we came back into office to find that everybody had these things in schools? But we need to have a national and an international conversation as to how do we balance people's access to a world that is not there, that is in the hands of a child whose brain and whose
Isn't even fully
maturity is
developed.
not yet fully developed.
Yeah.
You're going to tell them they can't smoke. Remember, with children, you were told you can't drink coffee when you're young. It's not good for young children. But yet you give them this most powerful weapon.
Yeah, it shapes them, it molds them, it influences them, yeah.
And at the same time, I've been arguing that you need to expose our kids to risk, because what do children want to play adults? They start at young and they can get away with it because they go and take their mother's makeup and their mother's shoes and whatever, and they play in house. By the time they become teenagers, it gets a little more dangerous. They want to smoke, they want to ride a bike, they want to have sex, they want to do other things. You now got us. And I'm saying to them, we teach children how to cross the road as little kids, safely. How do we prepare them to manage other risks as they get older? And therefore, the educational transformation that we need is not to give people knowledge, because facts, for the most part, although you have to be discerning, are found there in technology. What we need are the values and attitudes, the skills, the commitment to excellence in whatever you do, and empathy. Because you have to care about people. If not, you're going to be in trouble. And you have to do the best that you can do in everything that you do, however little, however small, however large. And you have to show them how they develop and mature, which is what we don't talk enough about, the social and emotional learning targets. What do you expect a child to say or do at 7, at 10, at 12, at 14, at 16? When the hormones start to get in the way, how do you deal with that? Recognizing that relationships with parents are not always the easiest during that period of time. So how do you create a pressure cooker type thing where the steam can be taken off and the child just doesn't explode into some kind of, awful situation? So these are the things that matter. So I'm seeing more and more a world that is not allowing us to have the conversation sufficiently that we need to have. And regrettably, it means that at the level of international policy, where we were talking about an international diplomacy and power relationships, that some of the things that ought to make common sense are ignored, and then we only get to it when it becomes a crisis. So there's so many things that we can do better. And let's take climate. Okay, they say that there's no climate crisis.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that whether we say it or not, the temperatures and the climate is not changing. There's a clear difference of opinion between those now who say there's no crisis and those who are frightened as hell that this is the greatest existential crisis that the planet will face.
Yeah.
So how do you bridge this moment in time? You've got to find a common love language. What do I mean? Methane is 80 times more dangerous than carbon. We talk about carbon all the time. But carbon stays in the atmosphere for hundreds of years. Methane stays in the atmosphere for 12 to 15 years. But it's 80 times more dangerous. Methane is generated from gas leaks, and the flaring of gas is generated from how we raise our livestock and farm rice. It's generated from landfills. If we were simply to fix the pipes that are leaking and stop flaring the gas, because when you flare gas, you can't make money from it. If you were to capture the gas and if you were to fix the leaks, what would happen to the oil and gas companies? They make more money. That's their love language. What would happen to the planet? It would stop the destruction of it. That's our love language. And the scientists actually tell me that if we get this right in the next 15 years, we can actually reverse the temperature by 0.5 degree. So what does that also do for the oil and gas companies? Oil and gas companies are not the villains. The emissions are. So if they can invest at scale for decarbonizing technology, then they can continue to have a longer route to run. And the controlling of the methane gives them the time to do the research.
To get to the
and to do what President Trump did with the COVID vaccines. Remember the
Operation Warp Speed? Yeah, we've talked about that.
You need Operation Warp Speed for methane. And that's what, I mean, I'd love to tell President Trump that. Because he gets what he wants and the world gets what it needs.
How is this I mean, you're saying this to me now.
I've said it a few times publicly because I think the world needs...
It's logical. It's what you're saying to me doesn't... I'm trying to think of it in my head and I'm going, I don't understand why this...
It's common sense.
So what's falling where? Is it companies that are trying to cut costs?
I've been talking to President Macron. I've been talking to a number of other leaders and I'm saying, look, we need to have a face-to-face meeting with the oil and gas CEOs because I actually believe that there is a win-win for us all. They have, remember Sting's song, I hope the Russians love their children too?
Yeah.
I believe that the oil and gas companies love their grandchildren. And unless they have a plan to live on Mars that they haven't shared with us yet, they got to get this act right on Earth. I feel that if we can reach a legal agreement, just as we did with the Montreal protocols to cover I think it's called HFCs, I keep fixing it up in my head, but the air conditioners and everything.
Oh, yeah.
With the
HVACs,
ozone.
yes, yeah.
Right. And we've been successful in doing that. If we took the same approach to methane and had a global methane agreement, now the Europeans might get a little antsy on the livestock farming, but there are ways to deal with that as well. That will not stop the farmers from making money. The farmers in Asia who do the rice, they may also get a little nervous, but I know that President Banga at the World Bank has already been working on how we can do things in terms of changing how we farm there.
We seem
this
to come
thing
up...
is so simple, Trevor.
Yeah, but
it boggles the mind.
We seem to... It is simple, but it's...
complex because you can't get people to change.
Yeah, but we come up with these solutions.